They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. As you know, my name is Fraser Hills, and I'm honoured to be here again today, having served 11 wonderful years in the Australian Army, and to be asked to provide some thoughts on ANZAC Day and try and outline on how I believe my service may have carried over into my hospitality career. And when David first asked me to come back a month ago, I was a little bit reticent because I didn't know what I would do differently. And from last year's speech, because I actually didn't touch on what I might have learnt in the Army and how that carried over into my hospitality career. And it's something I've always wondered about, but it's not something I've ever thought seriously about. I have just always believed that my military career helped me. Now, when I look at other parts of the Army, I was in the Army, if I look at parts like transport, I can absolutely see how that might flow into civilian life. This country still rides on the back of trucks. You only have to look at the highways and the clogged streets. So you can understand why people with a military background in transport would work. If my tanks don't work, I'm useless. So you can understand how people with an engineering background can transition from the Defence Force. Those who supply me with my bullets, my rounds, my fuel. If my tank can't move and I have no fuel, I'm useless. I might as well stay in the barracks and do nothing. The Navy. Look at the shipping industry. Of course that transposes to civilian life. The Air Force. Well, goodness me. The airlines are crying out for pilots, ground crew, staff, all of the time. But if you're a combat specialist, how does that work? So it's a difficult decision for someone in my position to make. I'll come back to that. So I never really thought about it. But since you've asked me, I've given it more thought. And I could go on forever, and I probably will. But no, I could go on forever because I've now been able to reflect back. It's something I've just not done. But just quickly for those of you, again, and I apologise for people who have to put up with me again, but for last year, I feel like my family history is a little bit symbolic of the ANZAC tradition. My dad was a Kiwi. So by birth, I'm 50-50 Australian and Kiwi. So I am an ANZAC. My dad was a brilliant sportsman. At 17, he was playing for Auckland in rugby union. You want to know why I'm a fanatic? Because Auckland was drummed into me as the second strongest rugby union team in the world, which they were in those days. They beat all touring sides, including the British Lions, South Africa, France, England, Scotland, Wales. They beat them all. The only stronger team in the world was actually the All Blacks, and 11 of 15 of them were generally out of Auckland anyway. Dad was also the New Zealand 100 and 200 yard record holder and was selected in the Commonwealth Games team for New Zealand. He was sent to Australia to train for the Commonwealth Games under Australian world champion, a bloke called Frank Banner. But Dad at the same time continued to play rugby and was selected to play for the Wallabies. He was in fact the second person ever chosen out of Melbourne rugby to play for the Wallabies. The first was the great veteran Sawiri Dunlop. So he ended up playing for the Wallabies. So a Kiwi playing for the Wallabies. He played then, symbolically enough for this year, in the very first test series ever held between Australia and the British Lions. Prior to that, they had only ever been one-off tests. So he played in the very first test series. The Korean War broke out. Dad left Australia, went back to New Zealand and joined the New Zealand Army. He went and fought for 3 years, and he was involved in, and again going back to the ANZAC tradition, very significant battle. It's not well known in the annals of world military history, but the Battle of Hill 317 in Korea. And that was a major hill in the area that was held by the Australian 3rd Royal Australian Regiment, one of our infantry battalions. Dad happened to be over there on the hill catching up with some Australian mates from his time living in Australia. Overwhelming Chinese forces attacked the hill. Dad was stuck on the hill and spent 2 weeks fighting with the Australian Army as the only Kiwi there on Hill 317. So they repelled the Chinese and repelled then a number of attacks after that for 2 weeks. Now, of course, they thought he was AWOL and he was charged with AWOL when he got back 2 weeks later.
Did you get up?
He did just get out of that. Then he returned to Australia and didn't go back to New Zealand. In 1981, I enlisted in the Royal Australian Army, and upon graduation from the Royal Military College Duntroon, I joined the Royal Australian Armoured Corps, which is tanks. I served with the 1st Armoured Regiment, the 2nd Cavalry Regiment, and I also served, among other things, as the Senior Operations Officer of the headquarters of the 1st Brigade, which at that time was our most powerful combat and deployable force. Whilst ANZAC Day is a day of solemn remembrance and a chance to reflect, whether having served or not, as I outlined last year, there really aren't many of us who have served who wish to fill the day with heaviness. But instead, after remembering those that have gone before us and those that currently bravely serve, attempt to reflect with fondness and some laughs, retelling stories that are always greatly embellished, as you guys can tell already today, that still bring smiles to what have, unfortunately though, become jaded eyes. And I say that because I maintain strong contact with a number of my former service friends. And the message I always give them is that may the good memories always be good, and may they always beat those that are not so good. And I deliberately avoid using the term bad memories. But what I'm finding, and I found with myself clearly as I get older, and that they are reflecting back to me too, is the day is often tinged with a heavy sadness for some reason. However, what I will say about ANZAC Day though, in my military service, is it provided me with the two proudest moments of my life. As a young captain, I was 1 Armoured Regiment where I was serving in Puckapunyal. We were asked to lead the ANZAC Day parade through the streets of Melbourne. And I was a young captain. The honour then fell to me to lead the parade through the streets of Melbourne. So I was the very first person that anybody saw at the front of the parade. And it was a great honour to me to be able to honour all those that had gone before and sacrificed their lives in that manner. And I thought it couldn't get any better as I'm up there with my sabre, marching in front of everybody, feeling pretty good and pretty proud of myself. And when we finished at the Cenotaph in Melbourne, I was being interviewed for television and the press and pictures being taken and so forth. And the day started to wind down, the parade started to wind down. And I was thinking, I'm very proud of this, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity as it's befallen me. Anyway, just as things were winding up, an ex-World War II digger in a wheelchair wheeled up to me, and he was on his own. He didn't have anybody with him, and he had a chest full of ribbons. And I had no service ribbons at that stage. And he just came up and he said, "Son, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you." And I really didn't know what to say. But I turned to him and I shook his hand and I went, "Sir, it's we that are proud of you, and we thank you for everything you've done going before us, because we're the country we are today because of you." This little guy just looked at me, nodded his head and wheeled off. Didn't say another thing. And if I'd had my wits about me, I would have gone and got his name and contact details and all those things. And I unfortunately never saw that man again. But that was the proudest moment of my life in the military. So what did I learn in the military? Certainly the true meaning of words such as integrity, which is the value I hold more dear than any. Leadership, planning, dedication, sacrifice, team, training, individual words, not team, training, and so on. Individually, particularly in a combat environment, the application of these words is of the utmost importance. Collectively, what they mean is this: culture, and hence success, isn't an accident. It is built, shaped, and reinforced every day. As you all know too well in business, and what I can attest to even more so in a military environment, without the right culture, and substitute any word you like along those lines, even with the greatest of plans, it's highly unlikely that you will succeed. It is more likely that you will fail. Understanding this and making it happen are two different things and are mutually exclusive, in my view. Let me take one of those words previously mentioned, which I'm sure you're interested in, which is leadership. This is a word thrown around, but what does it mean? What does it look like? First, let me tell you this. Displaying leadership and having ultimate responsibility are two very different things. Many people, including some that I served with, struggled with this idea. Just because you held a position of rank or authority and therefore held ultimate responsibility for whatever it was you were doing, it does not make you a leader. A true leader, though, takes ultimate responsibility for the outcome, good or bad. If it goes wrong, he or she protects those underneath them from any fallout. There are certainly different methods and styles. The one thing I will say I learnt, though, and believe with every fibre of my being, is that leadership does not exist in a vacuum. A true leader, in my opinion, works with everyone in his or her team, knows everyone's strengths and weaknesses, uses their strengths, including their knowledge that might in fact assist you in achieving your aim, your mission, your goal, and improves everybody's weaknesses the best that they can. A true leader constantly trains, advises and supports his team. And a true leader, very importantly, listens. It doesn't mean you accept what everyone says. But trust me, when faced with tough decisions and challenging circumstances, the answers are out there and they don't always lie with you. True leaders are never scared of the successes and development of their own people. I probably saw my greatest role in hospitality and certainly in the Defence Force was the development of my successor and the future senior staff of any hotel company or military environment I was involved in. Those who don't do this only do it because they are scared and not only abrogate their responsibilities in the most reprehensible of ways, I believe, but they create a dysfunctional and stifling environment. I wanted to unearth and develop my replacements anywhere that I was. I was never scared of making myself redundant. In fact, that's what my aim was, to make myself redundant for someone to come in behind me. I was always confident that doing that, there was always something else for me. There was somewhere else for me to then go. The other thing I believe a leader does is never punish people for making a mistake if they are truly attempting to do the right thing in their job and trying to get the right outcome. Use any mistake as an opportunity for improvement and greater knowledge and skill for everyone. We pay adult wages to take adult responsibility. Use a mistake as a learning tool for everyone, not an opportunity to punish. Encourage people to be proactive and make decisions. Otherwise, they will be completely incapable of doing so when they are in a position that they must do it for themselves. This is a face-to-face business, both of them, hospitality and the military. And some of the most loyal and satisfied guests I have ever had have arisen out of a mistake arising from what we were doing in our business. But if they believe you are genuinely interested in making it right, that you want to correct the mistake, they will be the most loyal guest you will ever have. I won't go on with anything else that I had written down except to say this, one final point. You may have noticed we have an election this Saturday. ANZAC Day is not the time to talk politics, but is certainly the day to reflect on how lucky we are to have elections. How lucky we are that we can have free and fair elections, and that we, the people, get to choose those who will lead us. That doesn't just happen. There are many countries that don't have the freedoms that we have and that we can sometimes take for granted. It's a catch cry, but freedom is not free. All of us every day have to argue for it. Some of us have to put on a uniform to defend it. ANZAC Day is then to reflect on those who have put on a uniform to protect the things that we hold dear. 103,000 Australian men and service women have put on the uniform and given the ultimate sacrifice doing just that. It's right and proper that we remember them. But that's the easy bit. The hard bit has been worthy of their sacrifice. The hard bit is doing something every day to uphold their values and uphold their commitment and keep Australia the Australia we want it to be. If each and every one of us can do that, we can be worthy of those that have gone before us, and we can all be proud ANZACs. They shall not grow old, as we that are left behind grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget.